I guess they liked one-ups in the early stages of the game, because I certainly don't find so many towards the end of it. This is it. I'm always straight out to World 8, straight from World 1, but it's only because I've been playing the game for so long, so I'm not showing off. If you can't do it, I don't know, maybe you ain't got as much experience as me, and practice is the only way you ever can, but I've never met somebody who been playing the game for as long as me who couldn't do this, so supposedly you already knew about this. In the old Japanese version you could walk to World 3 and as soon as you got on the boat you used your warp again and moved left. You used to be on the boat outside of the warp zone. Oh, what the hell? Come on! Stupid thing. Oh, great. Does this mean I'm going to have to go to World 7? Wow, I must have left something out. Oh yeah, I normally complete World 1 first. Oh well. That did not go according to plan. The game is playing its evil tricks. Is this the level I think it is? Yeah. Classic, continuous screen, look at that. Absolutely brilliant. Where would you get that now? 3D engines don't allow for this. You can get more fun out of a 2D game than any other kind of game, I think. Whee! Some people forget that they're playing on a continuous screen level. You can use it to your advantage at times. In fact, there's a level in this game where the only way out of the start of the level is to walk, even though it's apparently a dead end on to your left. The only way you can go is left, and then you come back in the right of the screen. It's the only way to start one of those levels. Absolutely fantastic. These all add to why this is got to be my favourite Mario game ever made for the NES. Definitely. But that's enough whining about the NES. I don't even really have to demonstrate how awesome it is. Everybody just knows the NES. It's awesome. Of course, back in the same generation as the NES was other memorable consoles, such as the Sega Master System. Unfortunately, I haven't got my hands on one yet, and as a result, it's against my beliefs to go using an emulator to show you, because that isn't showing the real console. You can't beat the real console. Even if the real console had flaws, that was part of that console, and you got to like it. Emulators are good, but I'm not showing you an emulator, so therefore I can't show you any Sega Master System stuff. If you want to look it up, look it up. Eventually I will have a Sega Master System, and then maybe I'll get round to messing about with that, who knows. But for the minute I haven't got one, so I can't show you anything to do with that. Still, I'll give it a mention, as I just have, saying, you know, it's another classic console, but ultimately the NES was the best console of its generation, and basically it kicked ass. The other memorable machine of that generation, I suppose, isn't classed as a games console, but it could play games. It's another machine that everybody should remember, because if they don't, gotta be something wrong with them. Commodore 64. I mean, look at that. People might say it's bulky, but when you think the entire machine's built into just that one box. This is the Commodore 64C. It's not the original kind. There was the Commodore 64A. It was slightly different shape and it had black keys. I'm not about to go pulling that out, so I always use my Commodore 64C just in case something goes wrong. So this is the next thing I'm going to fire up. Commodore 64 is in no way short of add-ons. To load things up you quite often had to use a tape. Just a bog standard audio cassette. If you put it in your standard audio cassette player or Walkman, you get a load of funny tones. That's basically the data on that tape that this system uses. I like how you have to plug it in. That contains power to that. It contains line that controls, switches the motor on and off, and obviously there's another line that carries data to or from the cassette tape. You should never put that in or out while the system's running. You can do it, but you shouldn't really risk it. I've still yet to figure out where this earth wire's meant to go, considering the system isn't actually earth. And How about the power adapter? Well, at least he had the decency to put the box somewhere on the wire. That box lowers the voltage down from the 250 volts AC current coming from the socket to a lower voltage. Apparently there's two outputs on it. Outputs 5 volts and 9 volts DC. Imagine if it was one of these other sort, like what the Atari had, where the plug was on the bottom of there. Pull the socket off the wall! I swear down, you could use this thing to put somebody's window through. But if you dropped that on your foot, you would be looking at months in hospital. It's absolutely fantastic. You gotta love it. Early computer technology, a brick. Build houses out of these now, don't they? I don't know, I think this is bigger. This thing's legendary. Well, I should probably stop whining about that and just get on with wiring the thing up. You don't want to hang around when this thing's loading off a tape. In fact, maybe this was one of the had the most connectivity out of a lot of consoles. You can use an Atari controller with this through 2 ports inside. You can connect floppy disks up to it. It even has its own cartridges, which, like I said, the system isn't intended for games, but you can play games on it. There's the cartridges you used to get. It used to come in a box like that. And actually, not much different to an Atari cartridge, but you probably shouldn't plug an Atari cartridge into this machine, as I severely doubt that would work. It wouldn't surprise me if you could get some kind of accessory that allowed you to port them to it, though. You couldn't do a lot of this stuff now due to the fact that these companies will just sue you as soon as look at you if you do something along those lines. Right, I think it's time to fire it up and load my favourite game off cassette tape. Wow. Here you go, watch this. Commodore 64 Basic version 2. Well, it's good enough. So how was it I used this? I think it was load, and that tells me to press play on the tape. Press play, and this unfortunately is a bit hit and miss with this system, as it's clocking up the years, but eventually it should tell me it's found a program. That's not the end though. No, then you have to wait for that program to load. Loads into the 64 kilobytes of RAM this thing has. Oh, bloody brilliant. This is what it does when it finds something, and then to run it you have to press the Commodore key. Yes, it has its own key. Well, that's pretty cool. But now I have to wait for that to load. And that took nearly a minute just for that to find that it had a program on there. So, right, now if you've got epilepsy, you're about to be having a fit. And eventually we'll get a graphic loads up there. This was next generation computing. The Commodore 64 is seen as being the best selling computer of all time, and I think rightfully so. I mean, when you consider the capabilities of other personal computers at the time, they didn't really keep up to this, and even if they did, this was cheaper, and cheap wins. In the home it does anyway. When you're at home you don't want to be going out spending millions of pounds on a big massive computer system, you just want something that works. The Commodore works, it was cheap, cost effective, and you could play games on it as well, so in its day it had everything. Fantastic machine, really. Well, here we go, it's loading. Rather than sit and wait for that tape counter to get to 120, which it has to before this game will start, I will just pause the recording and start it up again when this is going. One thing to notice when I do start it is the sound off this thing is fantastic. The SID, as it's called, is the sound chip in this sound interface device, I think it stands for, I can't remember, but it's a fantastic piece of hardware. You can sod this, I've been sat here for 3 days now waiting for this to load up. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I might as well have been. I think it's almost done.